If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Steve Sims. For more than 2 decades, he was the go-to contact for the wealthiest people on the planet. As the founder of the world's leading experiential concierge firm, Steve utilized his talent for connecting with people's passions and making things happen to develop a client list of the world's rich and famous, including Elon Musk and John Elton. Quoted as the real-life Wizard of Oz by Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine, Steve is the best-selling author of Blue Fishing, The Art of Making Things Happen. He's a sought-after coach, top 30 rated speaker in the US, keynoting at major conferences at the Pentagon and at Harvard. The topic Steve enjoys talking about most is Go for Stupid. What would you achieve if you weren't afraid of being laughed at? And in this age where people are terrified to do anything that might be laughed at, Steve is the exact opposite. And that's the main reason I invited him here to be this week's guest expert and mentor. So, Steve, what a pleasure it is to welcome you to the show. And thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well, good. One Brit to another. I love it. Steve, you teach people how to ignore what everyone else thinks about and go for big, stupid, ridiculous goals. I just love this. And so many of our authors, as I was telling you before we started recording, they want their book to be successful. They want to be successful, but somehow they stand in their own way of doing that. Talk to us about that and how we can think differently about promoting our book and ourselves.
Sadly, we've always had imposter syndrome. We've always had this situation where people have been easily knocked, especially a first-time author or anyone first time at doing anything. It's easy for them to go, well, I'm new at this, and I'm not sure, and I put my heart into it, but just maybe I'm not good enough. The problem is we tend to recognize too many people's opinions that don't matter. The people that can't afford you, you shouldn't be listening to. The people that don't or won't be impacted by you, why should you listen to them? And the downside is this listening to the wrong people has actually amplified. We've got social platforms now where people have nothing better to do all day than just to jump on the social and rant and shout and just blow out toxicity that affects and upsets people. And some people, I say some people, are vulnerable to that. Now, me, and I'm not joking here, my wife actually said that one of my superpowers was ignorance. I'm very closed. I'll go and do something and I will just go ahead and I'll force my way through and I'll work my vision and my passion and I'm going for my end goal. And if there's a bunch of people down the side scoffing and laughing and jeering, I literally don't see them. And the downside is it's not usually those people around us that is our biggest problem. As you quite openly said, it's ourselves. It's in those quiet moments when we're in the kitchen making a cup of coffee and that little self-doubt comes in our head, starts whispering and going, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that. Oh, maybe you shouldn't be on that podcast. Oh, maybe you shouldn't be on stage. Oh, maybe you shouldn't write that book. Ooh, don't finish it. What will happen if you release it? And we get that self-doubt. The danger today is there's too much noise that really doesn't matter.
And that's so true. I mean, there is so much noise out there. And yes, this imposter syndrome. And Yes, we can talk about it. How do we release that? Yes, not noticing other people, but that's sometimes quite hard when you are surrounded by all this noise, as you rightly say. So, first of all, yes, how can we sort of put the blinders on? How can we put the earplugs in our
Good.
ears and just walk forward doing something audacious,
Good.
something
I'm glad.
really outstanding?
Yeah, I'm glad you've actually focused on that because it's very easy to say, oh, don't listen to them when they're all jeering at you. And sometimes when you're jeering at you. Let's get into the tactics of how you do this. What is the point of what you're writing? What is the point of what you're speaking about? What is the point of what you're educating? Don't focus on you. That's where we get upset. Focus on your message and then work out, okay, who am I trying to impact and what will the outcome be if they don't hear it? If you've got a message, whether it be expansion of business, dealing with trauma, dealing with relationships, dealing with abuse, dealing with scaling your business, what is going to be the impact of the person if your message doesn't get to them? See, stop worrying about you. Stop worrying about what your hair looks like. Stop worrying about what you sound like and start worrying if your message doesn't reach the ears of the person you can help. If you're walking down the street and you see someone just about to step in front of a car, you don't pull out a mirror just to check your hair's okay. You do whatever you can. You jump. You risk scraping your knees, scraping your new shoes to save that person because you need to help that person that all of a sudden you don't matter. You need to focus on that. Your message is important, not you. You're nothing more than the carrier. You're nothing more than the vessel. But your message needs to reach that person that it can help. And you need to think, I'm saving that person.
Oh, yes. And books can save people's lives. I mean, people are writing books because they've experienced something and they've gotten healed, or they were a drug addict and they managed to overcome that addiction and they want to share that experience with other people to help others who are in similar situations. So, yes, these important things that they've done and the message, they are the vessel to bring that message to the public. You talk about go for stupid. You've done crazy things in your life. How do we even think like that? You know, shooting for the moon. You're like, okay.
Okay, so this is where I upset people, and I would apologize, but I'm not going to. Most of the reason that we stop going for stupid is because of our parents. Now, the book's called Go for Stupid because we always used to use that term in our office. I ran a very, very successful concierge firm for very, very wealthy individuals. And people would say, hey, I want to do this. And we'd be like, great, okay, I've heard you. But how can we make that request a stupid one? What we're going to do for this person? Ridiculous. You want to go backstage and meet your favorite rock star? That's not good enough. Let's put you on stage and you can sing with them. You know, you want to learn how to play the piano? Let's get Elton John. You want to learn how to play drums? Let's get Guns N' Roses. You want to go and see a movie? No, let's put you in the movie. We would always try and find a stupid, audacious goal and go for that with the understanding that, hey, we may not achieve it, but it will always be far more in advance to what the original request would be. Now, we used to get mocked at, but of course we ended up doing it. We've worked with Elon Musk, Elton John, the Vatican. We've done all these things, but we noticed that as we got kids, bear in mind, I've got kids, when the kids are 4 and 5 years old and they're running around the room with a pillowcase tied around their neck, pretending as though they're a superhero, as parents, we go, what are you doing? They go, hey, I'm a superhero. And we go, yes, you are. And we encourage it. We don't encourage it when they're 18 years old. We say, grow up, act your age, get in line, settle. And if you look at all of the people that we revere today, if we look at the rock stars of today, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, the Larry Page, the Richard Branson, all of these people had stupid ideas. and then tried to work out how to make them work. If you look at Elon Musk, he knew nothing about the banking world, and all of a sudden disrupted it with PayPal. Larry Page said, we need a common area to connect, and then we need to take that information and expand. He invented Google. And then you got Steve Jobs that couldn't even write programming and code and invented the Apple computer because he needed to make an easy, creative interface that we would work with. All of these people had audacious goals and they went for that stupidity. I would say that their success and mine and all of the people that I know, we remained curious, aggravated 5-year-olds. Now, if you're a curious, aggravated 5-year-old, you don't know how the remote control works. So what do? You take it apart and you look inside. You may not be able to put it back together again, but hey, now you know what the inside of a remote control looks like. I think today what we need to do is we need to become, all of us, curious, aggravated 5-year-olds. Can you imagine if the entire planet existed of those, what we could achieve?
I think it would be pretty scary because I'm not sure what it would achieve, but yes.
I beg to differ. You see, today, and I understand what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, the mayhem, the chaos. But look at the planet today. We actually want to jeer people. There you go. I'll play a game with you, Susan. Do you have a car?
I do.
Do you have a truck?
No.
No, you don't want a truck?
No desire to have a truck whatsoever. My girlfriend has got a truck.
But you don't want a truck?
I don't want a truck.
Okay. Do you remember when Elon Musk unveiled the Cybertruck?
I can't say I did, but I'll believe you that he did at some point in time.
So he unveiled a Cybertruck, this weird-looking vehicle to the planet. And here's the weird thing. I've spoken to people all over the planet, and I'm going to pay you an honor here. You are the only person that I've ever spoken to that don't recall him doing the unveiling online of his Cybertruck. And I did a podcast the other day with a girl. She was a student in Korea. And I said to her, do you have a truck? And she said, no, I have a push bike. I said, do you want a truck? She said, we'd have nowhere to park it, and we could never afford a truck. And I said to her, did you see the unveiling of the Cybertruck? And she said, my whole family did. We watched it on TV. So the point is, Elon Musk unveiled a Cybertruck. And he unveiled it that even people in different countries that could never be his client, don't have any interest in the truck, they saw the unveiling. Before the end of the webinar, before the end of the live stream, he had sold out of every single Cybertruck that he did. Do you remember seeing anything in the newspaper about the glass breaking when someone threw a rock at it?
I do not, but then you see, I'm ignorant about these things.
He actually did a thing in the Cybertruck that they were bulletproof glass windows.
Okay.
And to test it on stage, he actually had a rock thrown at the window and it pierced the window. It went through the window. The following day in the newspapers worldwide, it wasn't honoring him for inventing something so strange, so new, so revolutionary. It wasn't honoring him that he actually managed to captivate the planet, apart from you, of this new truck. It wasn't to honor him or revere him that he sold out of every available slot before the end of the 2-hour window. They had the headlines laughing at him because his bulletproof glass didn't work. You see, in today's planet, the society would rather laugh at you than support you. Rather than challenge you and revere you and encourage you, we'd rather mock you. Let's be serious. The British are Olympic champions at it. We love to put people up on pedestals and then we like to knock them down. That causes a lot of people fear to even try anything because they don't want to be attacked. And as a 5-year-old, you wouldn't care. As a 5-year-old, someone laughing at you, you wouldn't pay him attention. Or for 3 seconds, and then you'd move on and you'd forget about it. I think we'd have a happier place if we all started focusing like that.
I love the idea. I love the concept. just thinking so differently about this. But yes, the idea that people find something to mock at. I mean, I even said to my husband the other day, I wish they would say something good in the news. It's like we can only hear negative things. Everything is negative. As you say, it's laughing at somebody, making fun of them. Yes. And it's overcoming that. And I'm thinking of a few of my authors, who come to me and they say, I want to sell 1 million books. And I say, okay, well, how do you plan on doing that? How many people do you have on your list? And they don't have anybody, but they haven't any idea. They just feel, okay, 1 million books sounds like that's what I want to do, but they've no idea how to go about it. I'm not even sure that they even want to actually try it, but they think about it.
I kind of think the opposite there. I'd argue with you on that. If someone's got a goal of 1 million, great. We've now got a goalpost. Now let's work in reverse. You see, it's the people that don't have goals and then go out trying that they don't know what they're going for. And you're never going to achieve it if you don't know what you're going for. If you know that you're going for 1 million books to be sold and you have no followers, then your problem is your community. So focus on your community. The good thing about having an end goal is you can reverse engineer yourself into it.
That's beautiful. Yes. I'm going to look at all these crazy things when people come to me with, I want to sell 1 million books, or I'm going to sell 1,000 books in a few months. I'm like, okay, great. Yes. And you say, reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
What would it take to do that? I've got an author currently. She's talking about 1,000 books in a few months, and she's talking about making a call every day to an influencer who can help her sell those books. She's looking at who does she know who can influence a large group of people who, if they say, buy this, they're going to buy it.
Yep.
Your Go for Stupid book is coming out shortly.
Yes, 18th of October.
The 18th of October. It'll be out by the time this podcast goes out. Talk to us about the premise of that book. Are there lessons in that book? Since I wasn't able to look at that book beforehand, talk to us about what could we find, if we buy a copy of that book. What's it going to help us do?
So there's a lot of tactics in there on how you need to market, connect, communicate, and build and focus on your relationships. There's also a lot of humorous stories of what I did with some of the greatest people in the planet, how I did it, and hoping that you'll look at it and go, well, hang on a minute, if he can do it, I can. There's also an underlying aggravation that we are a society that is growing and bellowing in toxicity. And you said quite openly, the news never shows us any good news. Can you imagine if we woke up tomorrow morning, we turned the news on, and for the hour that the news was on, it was only good news? Can you imagine how motivated and driven you would be to go out into the world if all you ever saw was positivity on the news? But you won't. You'll see doom and gloom and disaster and recession. The news is the first place in the morning that will depress you. I had a friend of mine, Peter Diamandis. He said to me, I never watch the news in the morning. Why should I wake up fresh, spend 2 hours getting depressed, and then the next rest of the day trying to get back up to a positive mentality state? It just made no sense. He said, I never watch the news. If it's important, someone will contact me. I started doing that. I never watch the news in the morning. I never listen to the news. It'll come to me. I'll get an alert. I'll see it pop up on social. I'll get an email. I don't need to be depressed for 2 hours. So the book's going to give you all the tactics on how to start focusing on a positive mindset, how to communicate, how to actually be able to go for ridiculous and stupid goals, and how to identify those people around you that can actually challenge you to be able to achieve them.
It sounds really exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on it because you're right. I went through a stage where I wouldn't watch any news at all. And then all of a sudden I've got sucked back into watching it. And you're right. It's doom and gloom. And first thing in the morning isn't exactly what you want to fill your mind with, rather something that's creative and something that's going to allow you to think outside the box. Excuse that, cliche.
Isn't it sad, though, that doing good, supporting, challenging, all of those things are classed as out of the box? Isn't that kind of ridiculous when they should be? When someone says, hey, I want to do this, I want to make $1 million, I want to sell a million books, rather than everyone around going, oh, but you've got no followers. Wouldn't it be really good if we all got together to see how we can achieve that goal and challenge each other? If we could find a solution for that person to sell 1 million books, we can find a solution for anybody to sell 1 million books. That is what we should be focusing on.
Yes. I sold 500,000 books to one company, and that wasn't necessarily my goal, but it turned out it's like I didn't even realize that that was possible, but it happened. You just have to look at who can support you in doing what you want to do. And as you rightly said earlier, it's that reverse engineering. And wouldn't it be nice if we could collaborate? And I'm doing this with some of my authors. There's like, how can they all help each other promote each other's books? And everybody's got their own lists, and you help them get it out in the world because they've got an important message. And the more people who can see and know about this message, the better. There's another thing too, and that is standing, I believe, in front of the book, that you, the author, are what's really important. You're the vessel. The book, yes, is also the vessel, but the book doesn't have the same energy, life as you sharing your message. Yes, I'm going to buy your book. Yes, I'm going to be excited to read it. And now, having interviewed you, even more so, because, your energy is going to come out for me in that book. That's what the author is all about, I believe, is giving real life to your book and your message.
And I agree with you, but I don't want people to think that this is a tough prospect. I do a lot of podcasts. Obviously, I'm doing a lot of things at the moment on stage. I'm speaking literally all over the planet at the moment because of the book launch. But you've got to roll this snowball down the hill, and it will build its momentum. See, the beautiful thing is I'm doing this podcast with you now, okay? There are people that are going to hear it now. And let's say, for argument's sake, 100 people hear it. In 6 months' time, this podcast is still there. In a year's time, this podcast is still there. So when people go, oh, I've heard about this book, I don't know anything about this guy, and they look me up, they may listen to your podcast and they may go, wow, I've got to get this podcast. He's so dynamic. It's so brilliant. But this stays there. So all you've got to do is you've got to put the effort and energy in at the beginning and create that momentum. I did Bluefishing 5 years ago, and I put some momentum behind it, and I'm still reaping the rewards off of that, still making the retainers off of that, and now there's a second one coming in. So you don't have to think, oh my God, this is going to consume my world. No, but you do have to be an integral part if you want it to be successful. Because you're right. If you were reading my book to somebody, they wouldn't get the same energy as me reading my book to somebody. So you have to be the voice. You have to be the mouth of your message to get that out there.
Are you going to do an audio version of your book?
I am. I did the audio version for Bluefishing, and it was the most painful experience of my life. I love daylight. I live in Los Angeles. I love natural light. I love air. So being stuck in a recording studio for 2 days, no windows, no air, no natural light, was a very painful experience for me. But it did so well for me that I've got to do an audio book, but don't expect to hear that until 2023. At the moment, it's going to be hardback only. 6 months' time, we'll pull out the paperback. In between that, we'll do the audio.
Excellent. Yes. Well, and your energy will come through, and it's contagious. So that's always so important when your message is out there. People buy based on passion, excitement. And if you're excited and passionate about your message, it's like, it's contagious. Whereas if you're not excited, why should anybody else be?
And the key is my excitement for my story is going to be different from your excitement to your story, but it's your story. So it gives it authenticity. If someone gave me one of our books and said, hey, read this because you're more exciting, it wouldn't come across as authentic. You have to do your story and you do you. It will work better for you.
Yes, I think it'd be hard to do you. That's for sure.
Well, we have the
Especially-
accent.
I was just going to say, yeah, the Cockney accent, and I love it. It's beautiful. You've been quoted, and I said this in the intro, the real life Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
How come Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine said this about you?
They started to find out about this guy that all the billionaires were going to make them interesting. And as I always used to say, I give billionaires interesting cocktail stories. And that was always my pitch. And people suddenly started finding out about me and starting interviewing me and talking about me. And all of a sudden, I got a lot of press all over the planet. I was in the South China Morning Post. I was on Australian Sunrise TV, which is like the equivalent of the BBC and the Today Show in Europe and America. I was literally all over the planet, and I had gone from being completely unknown to all of a sudden people knew who I was. And then Entrepreneur did an article on me, and then so did Forbes. And it was a massive article they did. And for a big part of it, it actually ruined part of my business because a lot of the billionaires would pretend it was their connections that got them access when it wasn't. It was just me. So all of a sudden, they couldn't use me anymore because they didn't want to look like they needed my help. So I actually lost a lot of business out of it from that side of the business. But once the book came out, I was happy. And now I teach and train other people how they can do miraculous, stupid goals. And it's worked very, very well for me. But the articles, and I was just saying earlier, when you've got that kind of media and that kind of press, it doesn't go away. So that article came out, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, and people still talk about it.
Well, and it's something to talk about because not too many people that they would give that kind of quote to, even though, as you said, it might have lost you business in the short term. In the long term, it sounds as if it made you a lot more business potentially. I don't know.
Did.
I can't.
Yeah, it did. Let's not lie. We're friends. It did very well for me.
And I'm thrilled that it did.
I will be honest with you. The first day, true story, I was in bed and a friend of mine from the East Coast phoned me up and woke me up at about 7 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, hey, Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, what? What are you talking? He's like, hey, you're the wizard. And he kept on repeating it. I was like, what are you talking about? And he went, you don't know? And I went, no. And then he sent me the article and told me that I was being quoted as the real life Wizard of Oz. And I was like, oh my God. And I was mortified that I suddenly had that attention. This was before a book and everything. I was really upset. And that day I was very depressed because I was thinking to myself, oh dear, I'm being called the real life Wizard of Oz. This is not good. And of course, within the month, some of my clients started dropping off and I'm thinking, this is terrible. This is the worst thing that could have happened. But of course, someone read it. I got a book deal. I started doing more TV, more stages. So yeah, it paid off well for me. But the first day, I was a little bit depressed.
As one door closes, another one opens, I believe they say. Yes.
Yep, and that did.
So that's interesting that you actually admitted, and thank you for doing that and being so honest, saying you got down and you're like, oh my goodness, this is not what I wanted.
Yep.
But yet it turned out differently, even though, first of all, you didn't enjoy the fact to be known as the real life Wizard of Oz, which I think is a great compliment. It sounds as if something scared you about that. Is that the case? What actually was going through your mind at that time?
I didn't think I wanted that attention. I'd always been a guy that just kind of like rolled around, did my own stuff. And, I've lived around a lot of celebrity status and a lot of fame and a lot of power. And people treat you differently. They talk to you differently. They want things. And I never, ever wanted that. Still don't want it. And so, whenever I saw that, I was like, because I would be with people that couldn't even leave their house to get a coffee. there were paparazzi outside their house or people that hated them. And I would be able to just leave their mansion or their penthouse, go and get a coffee. I used to bring them back a cup of coffee. Now, they don't have a coffee machine in there, but sometimes you just want a McDonald's hamburger or you just want an ice cream from the local ice cream store. There's something about just being able to do that these people can't do. And they would like, can you get me a coffee at the bottom of the street? I'm like, really? And they were like, I'd just like a coffee. I don't want it to be made from a barista machine in a China cup. I just want a cup of coffee in a little paper cup. And I would go down and get it. And of course, no one would bother me, but I'm going back to someone that can't even leave his house just to get a coffee. So when I started getting that kind of notoriety, it concerned me how far it would go.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I've told the story too, the fact that I've held myself back many times because I saw so many of my speaker colleagues having family issues because they were on the road the whole time and they were making a lot of money and being, famous, speaking all over the world. And yet they came home, their family life was a wreck, between the kids and the spouse. And I was like, I don't want that. My family's far too important to me. So
yes.
I sort of held myself back because I didn't want that kind of fame and notoriety for myself because I thought that it would actually ruin what I treasured, what my core values are. So yes, it's sad. In a way, it's really sad. They have all this money and this fame, this notoriety, and yet they have put themselves in sort of like a glass box. They can't get out of.
It is tough.
Steve, if people wanted to get hold of you, the book, talk to us about, what you would like them to do as a result of listening to you here.
Well, you can find me at Steve D. Sims anywhere. D for dashing and 1M in Sims. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm the same everywhere. Or if you want to visit my website, I'm at steveDsims.com. Or you can just type in goforstupid.com. If you visit any of those websites, you'll hear about the book when it comes out. And when it's there, you'll get to see about bluefishing. There's quite a lot of ways of getting me, but just Google steveDsims.com.
And I'll put that in the show notes so it's easy for people to just click a link.
Perfect.
Steve, if you could leave our listeners with a golden nugget, what would that be?
No one cares about you. They care about your message. And as soon as you realize that, you're really not going to care how your hair looks that day.
I love that. Next time I think about looking in the mirror, how do I look? Do I have lipstick on? Is my hair okay?
Perfect.
No, nobody cares. And you're absolutely right. They really don't. They don't care what you're wearing. They care more about themselves than about you. So thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom so generously. By the way, listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected it to, let's jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales. You've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. So go to brainstormwithsusan.com to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.